Hi there, welcome to BNC's special interview. I'm Mikal Raj, your host. Today we talk to Bruce Hope. He's the chairman of the Malaysia-New Zealand Chamber of Commerce on trade and investment linkages between both countries. Hi Bruce, how are you?
Hi Michael.
Welcome to the studio. Malaysia-New Zealand, more than 60 years of diplomatic relations. So how do you describe two-way trade and investment between both countries?
Well, the trade between both countries is actually really good. New Zealand and Malaysia are both seen as open economies, both looking to do free trade wherever possible. And it's been growing very well over the last sort of 7 years in particular, with the free trade agreements that have actually been signed. So
the free trade agreement was signed in 2009, right?
Yes.
So how effective has that agreement been in boosting two-way linkages?
It's been fantastic, actually. It's grown the trade for both countries by around 20%.
Yeah.
So, and it's also helped a lot with investment particularly from New Zealand into Malaysia. Prior to the free trade, it hadn't been that great, but after the free trade agreement, it really boosted the investment.
So what are the areas that New Zealanders are investing in Malaysia, and what are the potential areas that you think Malaysia has to offer to New Zealand?
Okay, so the areas I've been investing in, a bit of manufacturing. One of our prime examples of investment has been with Fonterra, our major
dairy products,
and they actually have a very large facilities here in Malaysia, and so they've invested in that expansion. So
what about IT and education? Are there potential areas?
Education is a very large growth area, and in fact that's one of New Zealand's largest service industries. It provides about 20% of the services that we provide to Malaysia.
Information technology, I think it has taken on a new meaning because of the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence. Is there anything that New Zealand can offer Malaysia in this area as people innovate and as there's disruptions to technology?
Yeah, one of our major companies, Datacom, has been doing a lot of work in this area, and they actually have one of their regional headquarters here in Malaysia, employing quite a lot of Malaysians. And one of the things I actually saw, they had a demonstration as part of New Zealand Week late last year in the pavilion, the Aotearoa New Zealand exhibition, and they were showcasing some 3D virtual reality, augmented reality, and so that's an area that New Zealand can contribute to.
So how is New Zealand adapting to the fourth industrial revolution? What are the changes that are taking place in New Zealand that Malaysia can emulate?
Well, New Zealand is a leader in basically doing things well, doing it right, well-trained people, very high education system, and with that we've also had the requirement to do things on your own, because we're a small country, a long way from anywhere else, so we've actually had to do a lot of innovation, developing things for ourselves which we can then take as a best of breed out to other countries.
Can you share some trade figures or investment figures between both countries in 2016 and 2017, and maybe give us an outlook?
Well, the full year 2017 trade figures haven't been released yet, but there appears to be at least comparable with 2016 in terms of trade. So the trade between both countries is around 1 billion to 1.5 billion, and slightly in favour of Malaysia to New Zealand, but it's fairly equal. So.
Yeah, but what about investment? What is the total amount of investment between both countries?
The investment appears to be around 1 to 1.5 billion for both countries, in each other's countries.
But compared to other trading partners of Malaysia, isn't this figure like not so encouraging? And I'm sure both parties are trying to raise it to a more compatible level. You know?
Yeah, that's true. They both are really working on that. In fact, Malaysia is New Zealand's 10th largest trading partner, second largest trading partner within ASEAN, a combined import-export, and something that New Zealand's really looking to leverage on to keep on growing with the ASEAN market as well as within Malaysia.
What are some of the activities that the Chamber takes to boost trade and investment linkages between Malaysia and New Zealand?
Well, New Zealand's a very small country and we don't have a lot of large MNCs, large companies. So what we're doing is we're working with smaller companies, trying to see how we can bring them here into Malaysia. And Malaysia is what they have is a lot of what we need from Malaysia actually is I'm now stuttering, sorry. What we need from Malaysia is a standardised way of bringing these companies in and helping them. We really need good Malaysian partners because, as I say, we don't have the MNCs who come in and set up large facilities. We actually just have small people who need a bit more help in establishing their presence here.
Yeah. But if you're talking about these companies coming here and they need help, what kind of areas you're looking at? Because earlier you mentioned that dairy is quite prominent. And
yeah,
like that.
So dairy contributes to around 60% of the exports from New Zealand to Malaysia, somewhere between 50 and 60%. But we also have agri-technology, also biotechnology, there's some of that coming in. Education obviously is one of the major things. Tourism is another strong point as well.
Is the distance between New Zealand and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, is that a deterrent to increased trade and investment linkages?
Not really a deterrent. Potentially more of the thing is to increase the investment or to increase access is in fact having more direct connectivity, because right now there is only one airline, Malaysian Airlines, flies directly to New Zealand from KL. AirAsia, which also is now present, is actually via Australia. So the direct connectivity would be something really to help increase the business frequency. I don't think distance is that much of a challenge. It's only 4 hours time difference. Very easy to make calls with people on WhatsApp, so or directly. So there's no real challenge there.
How do you look at Malaysia as a market comparable to other economies in the ASEAN region?
Well, I'd say they're our number 2 trading partners between New Zealand and Malaysia's number 2 within ASEAN, and keeps on growing and very well structured. And because of the open market, the way that it's well structured to be able to do business here, it actually does make it very easy to set up and trade with Malaysia.
Talking about open markets and all that, under this FTA between both countries in 2009 and this zero tariff rate recognized by both economies, and does it give a wider prospect in establishing a new investment agreement or taking ties to a higher level?
Yeah, well I mean, the free trade agreement has really spurred things along, because there are now 2 free trade agreements, the bilateral, which is New Zealand, Malaysia, as well as the combined ASEAN, Australia, New Zealand free trade agreement. With both of those in place and in effect, because even though the agreement was signed in 2009, it didn't actually become into effect until 2010. Within the last 7 years, as I mentioned before, the trade has actually really grown, and it then becomes quite a good gateway. If we have a look, for example, Fonterra have been here for 40 years and use that as their gateway into ASEAN. And so with that good structure in place and with the facilities in place, it does make it easier for us to trade.
But this ASEAN-Australia free trade agreement, what I understand is coming in for a review this year?
Yes, but if we have a look at the reviews that they've done previously, if the way I understand how they do the reviews and look at the markers in terms of improved trade, what's been left to done, what's not left quite implemented. Last time they did the review, it was thumbs up all around. It was, and
do you see any problem areas that need to be improved this time?
It's mostly more around the non-tariff barriers, which are the things that we need to concentrate on, how to get past where you need to pay a fee to register something, as opposed to just the straight bring a product in, here is the tariff. So, but most of the tariffs have been eliminated anyway.
Oh, I mean, that's those are the obstacles to trade.
Yeah, so it's just the smaller things, the non-tariff barriers.
But has the New Zealand Chamber of Commerce made representations to MITI, for instance, to tell them about this issue and overcome it?
That's mostly been handled by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, as well as New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. Where the Chamber has been focusing on is actually identifying potential markets here in Malaysia and potential businesses in New Zealand who may be able to take advantage of that, and also vice versa.
Is there a definitive plan by New Zealand to use Malaysia as a gateway to Southeast Asia under this ASEAN Economic Community, the AEC?
They're certainly a key player in that whole thing. With the being the second largest trading partner within the ASEAN bloc, all the pieces are there for us to actually take advantage and move further. And once you're actually entered here into Malaysia, to get access to the rest of ASEAN is very straightforward.
Okay, what about reverse investments? What are the potential areas that Malaysian companies can invest in New Zealand?
When our trade minister was here last year, he was talking about tourism. He said, "Come, build hotels. We need more room for our overseas tourists." So
you're talking about property developers to go there and build.
Yes, so that was one of the things he actually noted was the hotel investments. But also in terms of other tourism areas, there's still plenty of potential for development of tourism. We're not really a strong manufacturing base, so it's more of what other little value adds that we can do. But IT doesn't have to be in both single direction, it can also be within New Zealand as well.
Are there Malaysian companies who have taken up the offer since the minister made those statements?
I'm not sure.
Okay, okay. In what way can Malaysia enhance its attractiveness as an investment destination?
I think it needs to just continue what it's been doing with the free trade agreement and focusing on making sure that that's well implemented, to again focus on the non-tariff barriers, making sure it's easy to work. My time here, I've been here for the last 15 years on and off, and I've seen huge advances in how e-government works, how to actually get things registered. There are many things easier to do here in Malaysia than it is in New Zealand.
Well, but the Chamber, what are its plans? What did they do last year, and what are its plans for this year in terms of events maybe?
So we're shaping the Chamber in a slightly new direction this year. So we've done a lot of events, and if we have a look at the makeup of a chamber, you end up with sort of two types of people joining a chamber. You have a business people looking at trying to get more business, but you also have expatriates who have turned up here who just said, well, I need to join something. We've also got a lot of Malaysians that have studied in New Zealand. There's somewhere between 50 and 100,000 New Zealanders, because every year, Malaysians, because every year 2,000 Malaysians study in New Zealand. So with all of those people there, they are also looking to join the chamber and facilitate business, but also connect. So part of our business development enhancement is doing business directory, so you end up with a business community that's New Zealand related. It may not be a New Zealander per se, but it's a New Zealand connection, either through a university alumni, importing New Zealand products, tourism, people went to New Zealand, so we've got that part there. We're also looking at starting off with a business incubator to have, as businesses come from New Zealand and wants to set up here, there are many things that it's easier to have somebody on the ground to do, such as registering the company, helping set up bank accounts, doing market surveys, those sorts of things. But we still need to take care of the people who want to have the social connection. So one of our big events that we're planning coming up in April is a CSR event. It's in collaboration with one of the hotel chains here, and so we're going to be doing cleaning up of the beach and reef in Redang Island. This is an association with Bajar, but we're also bringing up some New Zealand technology. We're bringing up an underwater ROV and also some 3D software to see if we can do some reef mapping. So that's a bit of a business development angle, not only for the resorts, but then also potentially for an oil and gas sector. Because right now with oil and gas, when you do underwater inspections, it's mostly somebody looking at the video. Whereas if we've actually got the video feed comes into some software which can do the mapping, then it may eliminate the need for people to actually physically go down or physically looking at all this. So that's an IT development that we're driving through an event.
So this is a private sector initiative between both parties, is it?
Yes, and that was sort of initiated by the Chamber, bringing all of these parties together.
Has it gotten off the ground?
The event is going to happen at the end of April. It's locked and loaded. So
I see, okay. And any other events you all are planning?
We also have, we always have our major gala events and things, but we're also wanting to do an FMB event. It's a bit of a twist, this one. So, because obviously we've always done a lot of FMB in malls and things, but what we're looking at now is a MasterChef style, but we travel to New Zealand, catch the product, bring it back to Malaysia, and then get the Malaysian chefs to actually cook it, maybe in a MasterChef style. That's something that's in planning for near the end of the
Bruce,
year.
a lot more to talk about trade and investment linkages between Malaysia and New Zealand, but we'll take a short break and we'll be back after these short messages. Welcome back. Bruce, Malaysia has become one of New Zealand's fastest growing export markets with key exports including milk powder, butter and dairy spreads, meat products, fruits, vegetables, and this presently stand about 3.4 billion ringgit. So what are the in totality, what are the makeup of New Zealand's products that come to Malaysia?
Yeah, so as we were discussing during the break, right, the majority of it is the dairy products. So Fonterra, I'm sure the Malaysians here know the Anlene brand, that's very well known, so that's the Fonterra brands. So, and say that's 60% of the products coming in. The other things that we're actually importing here into Malaysia, there's we actually import bits of wood. It's actually fiberboard is one of the products that we bring in. Agri technology is a fairly important thing here. We have things such as power fences, electric fences for farming is one of the products. That's a very small one. We also have wine. It's not so important for the Malaysian economy, but New Zealand's very keen on that one, and that's been growing quite substantially since the FTA. So that's the majority of the products coming into Malaysia.
In competitiveness, your dairy products have been in Malaysia for more than 40 years and all. What is the special thing about dairy products from New Zealand that helps you to command a market share, quite a dominant market share in Malaysia?
Well, I think it's a combination of the fact it's a really good product. It's clean and green, so the cows live outside. You have a healthy environment for the product. So when it comes to Malaysia, it actually tastes good. But then also Fonterra has made a very large investment to make sure it actually is handled here. It's the key gateway. So Malaysia is actually one of the world's largest dairy exporters by default of actually the milk powder that comes in, or the milk products that come in from New Zealand.
It has got a plant.
A lot of it's actually repackaged and exported into ASEAN and also into the Middle East here from Malaysia.
So basically they're using Malaysia as a gateway to ASEAN, right?
And so that's why from here it will be a gateway as the markets keep on growing inside ASEAN. Malaysia, in particular for Fonterra, well set up to actually expand into those markets.
And the plant is in Shah Alam,
yes.
is it?
Yes, and the plant is in Shah Alam or Sabang High Tech.
Okay, because there are a lot of complaints and cases, instances of baby's milk formula being spoiled and selling all these giffen goods and things like that, you see, Johor Bahru, you see. So that's why I'm asking you about how important is dairy milk coming in from New Zealand.
So it is very important, yes.
So adhere to highest standards of health and...
yes, very, very high standards. That
okay.
was something that I guess they didn't want to happen, but it's passed. They've put in a lot more, even more stringent checks. I mean, the checks before were actually very high, so now they've actually made sure it's even more stringent. And
yeah. Bruce, let's talk about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. I think Australia and New Zealand were one of the countries that were really pushing for it, and then at the end of 2016, President Trump came and sort of withdrew from the agreement, and it was a big blow. And in fact, some of the countries openly said that the reason why they were in the TPP negotiations was the potentially vast American market, you see, and now the TPP has got a life of its own again. So the question is, without America in TPP, is there a life or is there potential for the TPP by the remaining countries?
yes, so the countries are still
But then, as a private sector official and a chamber person, what would you want the TPP? What kind of form it would take?
I say, because New Zealand is very much for free trade agreements, so whatever we can get is going to be a good thing. Say, if the US isn't in there, then whoever's left is still very large markets for the participants.
Yeah.
I think another agreement that's actually under discussion right now and is scheduled to be agreed, either was supposed to be late last year but now during 2018, is the RCEP,
oh, yeah.
the Regional Cooperative
Economic Partnership.
Yes, so that's actually the ASEAN 10 members plus 6 other countries, which is China, Japan, Australia, New Zealand and India, and that actually comprises of 50% of the world's population and 30% of the world GDP, so that's actually a pretty large FTA anyway. So once that's actually put in place, then I think it's well set for trade to be expanding in all of those countries. So.
But then again, the question that arises of the RCEP and in the absence of the United States from the TPP is that China might actually dominate the markets in ASEAN, markets in beyond ASEAN, Asia and things like that. So do you see China being a potential threat to investments coming out of Asia, Oceania and other countries? See? Because you can't deny the fact that China is such a predominant player in trade and business all over this area. Is it?
Well, China is such a dominant player that with or without the agreements, it's actually a very large partner to be dealing with. So the investments will actually happen in whatever form, regardless of the FTA agreements, because China is obviously number 2 economy in the world. So they pretty much influence every form of economic discussion you come across.
Will there be any resistance from maybe Australia and New Zealand and the other countries against China?
Well, China is New Zealand's largest trading partner, so I guess the answer is we need to be trading with China along with everybody else. So.
I see. So when will the RCEP actually take effect?
I will say it was supposed to have been concluded by the end of 2017. I haven't seen any news saying it was concluded, so it must be coming very close.
And then what about the TPP then? When can we see a TPP coming into force?
And again, from what I understand about these agreements is once you actually agree, then you've got a lot of hard yards to actually get it all finally formed and then implemented. So it's normally another year or two so before between the agreement and actually implementation. And
Are you
enforcement.
involved in the private sector negotiations for trade and investment within the ASEAN economic integration? It's like it's the ABAC, you know, ASEAN Business Advisory Council and things like that.
Currently the Chamber isn't involved in that, but some of our colleague chambers from New Zealand are. So.
Okay. Are there definitive plans? What are your plans for this year, 2018, in taking Malaysia, New Zealand trade and investment linkages to a higher level? Are there definitive plans? Can you elaborate on that?
From the chamber perspective, yes. What we're starting off with some smaller companies, introducing them. So, such as that the example I gave before of the ROV and the 3D company. That 3D company we already introduced to an oil and gas player a few weeks ago, and they said they like the solution. Can you please submit a tender response already? So that's already starting. So we're now searching out for more of those. We're also using our gateway partner chamber, ASEAN Business Chamber in Auckland, to help source some of those people who are looking for opportunities in ASEAN and Malaysia, to help bring them in, and then we play our role here of actually vetting who they're dealing with, so that we end up making sure you've got happy people dealing with each other.
Okay, Bruce Hope, thank you very much for your time. This has been BNC's special interview. I'm Mikhail Raj. Until the next time, bye for now.